My original Kenshi review sucks. I spent far too long repeating myself over certain talking points and giving my impressions of it at face value. The fact that it kinda looks like arse. However, today I've come back to the game to do it a little more justice, take a step back from excessively ranting about the game's visuals and to focus a little less repetitively on what the game does right. Welcome to the post-apocalyptic weeaboo Mad Max world of Kenshi, only instead of cool cars and Mel Gibson, it has slavery and racism. Well, I guess the last two are pretty much the same thing. Kenshi is a game that holds no hands and gives you no quarter. This world you're dropped in is a hellhole and it's up to you to decide what you're gonna do next. It gives you an immense sense of freedom and a huge sense of satisfaction as you progress and achieve in its unfriendly and unforgiving world. But on the other hand, its experience comes with some frustrations, and I promise I'm not just talking about the graphics. The game can quickly become rather grindy and has a lack of polish in many areas that can leave a bit to be desired. But even with its frustrations, Kenshi is a brilliant example of what a sandbox should strive to be, and offers a huge amount of replayability along with the ability to help players drive their own story in its wide open expanse, because believe me when I say that first impressions mean nothing. It's a little hard to describe exactly what kind of a game Kenshi is. I suppose it's a sandbox RPG in a lot of ways akin to the overworld in Mountain Blade games, with a sort of MMO and real-time strategy feel to it as well. To begin with, you're dropped into its world with no skills and little chance of surviving. The game throws some tutorial menus at you to get you going and then gently nudges you out into its big ass map and sends you off to be beaten up by bandits or massacred by the wildlife. The game also comes with multiple starting scenarios that help you get a head start for a certain kind of campaign and add some variance or extra challenge, which is really a simple addition, but one that does wonders for its replayability. The thing with Kenshi is that it can be a different kind of game depending on your playstyle or what your goal is. Whether your goal is to build a thriving settlement, to go out and become a powerful warrior or assassin, or just to LARP as a slave, the experience and how the game plays out will change completely. Another thing about this game is that you're not special. You're not some hero dropped down from the heavens on a grand quest or some kind of demigod with unnatural powers. You're just some chump, the same as any other chump out in this absolute hellscape you found yourself in. All characters and creatures in the game, yourself as well as all of the NPCs in the world around you, have stats pertaining to their combat abilities, physical stats, thievery, sciences and labors that are all trained by actually doing them. You don't become a great warrior without getting the shit kicked out of you several times. And I really like that. The thing I like the most about it is that it helps to make things that are normally mundane in video games exciting. Winning your first fight in Kenshi feels like more of an accomplishment than beating a boss in most other titles. Though I will admit that you can kinda cheese the training for certain stats, like sneaking for example. And there's no narrative that you have to partake in, unlike other certain sandbox titles that shoot themselves in the foot by shoehorning in a linear storyline. Starbound. Not only what you become, but what you accomplish is completely up to you. And if you know me, the big whoop, the funny axolotl man, you know that I'm the ultimate simp for the sandbox genre, and Kenshi is a brilliant example of what a true sandbox should strive to be. Like I said, Kenshi is not a game that wants to hold your hand. This is an unforgiving and brutal experience. A lapse in concentration can leave you bleeding out on the floor as you let bandits sneak up on you and take everything you have, or leave you being eaten alive by a giant dinosaur monster with a beak. A big part of Kenshi is its combat, where you don't fully control your squad members rather than just giving them orders or setting certain combat stances. How they perform in combat is down to their skills as well as their equipment, and you'll quickly find out that there's little shame in running from conflict. It's better than letting the cannibals take all of your comrades. Health is spread across different parts of the body, limbs, head, chest and stomach, as well as blood and hunger levels. Through combat you'll take hits to certain parts of your body and excessive damage to certain areas will leave you crippled, missing limbs, incapacitated, or just straight up dead. It'd be nice if there was a way to try and target certain body parts in combat at the risk of it being a little overpowered, as well as a way to execute or just attack downed enemies at all, rather than standing over them and waiting for them to try and crawl away so you can score a hit that's enough for them to bleed out. Another big part of the game is its factions spread around the map, all in control of certain areas and town hubs that they operate out of. Your standing with factions can change depending on your actions, and if you reside within their borders, they'll expect tribute from you, or just straight up try and kill you. Each faction operates in their own way and will treat you differently based on your race, gender, and social status. The Empire faction treat being poor as a crime, so it's a lot like living in America. The Holy Empire are incredibly devout to their god and also have a penchant for slave labor. Also a lot like America. The part of Kenshi that appeals to me the most is its settlement building mechanics, allowing you to create an outpost anywhere in its vast expanse, granted that it's not too close to an already pre-existing settlement. This takes a lot more from the real-time strategy side of the game and makes use of being able to automatically queue and set tasks for your squad members to do things like crafting goods or growing weed to fuel your drug empire. The job queuing isn't perfect and has a few quirks, but it does the job well enough for the most part to avoid excessive micromanagement. There's also a research tree to progress through, allowing you to unlock all manner of new buildings, refineries, farms, weapons, armor, and many more things to boot. Building a settlement also allows you to start your own faction and build your own influence in the world. Not to mention that once you have an established base setup, you can use that to explore the trading side of the game or to use it as a hub for your powerful warriors and assassins. The different paths that the game offers tie into each other well, and with the ability to hire more squad members, you can branch out rather than restricting yourself to one playstyle. Now, to say that the map in Kenshi is enormous is an understatement. The right terminology would be fucking gigantic. There's something to be said for procedural generation in sandbox games, but Kenshi's map is so enormous and diverse that there's boundless room for you to play and explore in. You'd have done more than the game can throw at you before you truly made use of its entire surface. But on the same side of the coin is the fact that a lot of the map is really just empty space, barren land that you wouldn't settle or have any meaningful interactions in, largely just land you'll simply be passing through at some stage in order to go somewhere more interesting. Another particular issue I have with the map interface is that the coloration or look of the map in the UI doesn't always correlate that well to the actual landscape itself, making finding a nice spot to settle a little more difficult. One area where I do feel that the game falls in a bit of a heap is with its AI, particularly for its pathfinding and with enemy raids. I feel that raids on your base are almost entirely ineffectual because you're informed when they're coming to attack you and you can just evacuate, leaving them to break down the gate, run around inside for a while, and then leave without actually doing anything. For a game that's often so relentlessly punishing, to have what would normally be considered a major threat to be negated so easily is a little bit of a letdown. Raids also had the tendency to sometimes break, getting stuck inside buildings or on walls and the like. I also wish that there was a little more character variety in the game. I like that each race has bonuses and penalties for experience gain in certain stats, but it'd be great for there to be personality traits for hireable characters to help diversify them more than just being pure stats, or to have more dynamic character interaction between your squad mates. And no playthrough of mine has ever been really free of bugs and glitches. In general, the game lacks a bit of polish across the board and has a few janky moments that detract from your enjoyment. Now, as much as I went on and on about it in my original review, my stance on the game's visual design has not changed. And yes, I know that it was in development for many years and that for the majority of that time it was a one-man team working on it, but that doesn't prevent it from looking like Mountain Blade's inbred cousin. And even with its less than impressive visuals, the game doesn't feel particularly well optimized. Switching between different squad members who aren't even that far away from each other can introduce some annoyingly long load times and delays, which is a pain when you're obsessively swapping between members to keep an eye out for bandits or monsters that they might run into. Another visual part of the game that pisses me off is the camera. It always manages to get itself pushed around or obscured by the environment. The game should be more aware of when to hide certain parts of the landscape rather than letting them obstruct your viewing angle. The UI is also not great, it's just unappealing and not super intuitive either. I personally think that binding game speed controls to the F keys was a weird choice as well, and I bind them to 1, 2, and 3 almost straight away. However, one aspect that I criminally underrated in my original review is the game's soundtrack, which upon revisiting the game a little more, is pretty damn good. My problem with the soundtrack would be that there's not enough of it. It's nice and atmospheric to have it pop in every now and again, and it does a great job at helping to enhance the game's general mood and feeling of hopelessness, but it just doesn't play often enough to really add to the experience. Seriously though, let the main menu theme play out completely, cause it's an absolute banger. Despite the issues that I have with Kenshi, one thing I can't deny is that for a sandbox connoisseur such as myself, this is a good ass game. A game with a huge amount of freedom to let players tackle it how they want, with plenty of replayability to boot. I very much enjoy its settlement building mechanics and think that all of its playstyles have something to offer, and while at a first glance I won't deny that it looks like a Source Engine mod, the appeal of Kenshi doesn't lie within its first impressions. The appeal of Kenshi is in the story that unfolds as you play. Whether that's a story of triumph, hopelessness, or total mundanity is up to you. In my original review, I actually said that this game was kind of expensive, which isn't entirely true. It's certainly not as cheap as a few other titles similar to it, though is much lighter on your wallet than your typical AAA release. For 40 odd Australia bucks, I would definitely recommend it. And with Kenshi 2 not too far over the horizon, I'm hoping that many of the issues that I have with the game will be revisited. Lo-Fi Games now have a much bigger development team thanks to this game's success, and I'm eagerly awaiting the sequel's release. Much like many other games in its genre, Kenshi is a game that you'll need to be willing to invest some serious time into, not least for its grindiness or simply the kind of game that it is, but that you'll need to be willing to push past its rough and tumble exterior to find the truly great sandbox that lies underneath it.